My toxic mother-in-law tried to ban me from going to the funeral of my father-in-law. Well, the joke's on her because I decide to reveal to her a secret that's going to cause chaos in her life. Let me tell you what it is. My name's Billy. My husband's name is Billy. Yes, me and my husband have the same name. Yes, everyone jokes about it. I really needed a place to talk about Billy's mom. My friends have all heard it, but I just can't stop telling people what a jerk she is. I'm pretty sure people here would appreciate and love reading about an annoying mother-in-law. This one is too chaotic. She's the queen of all bad mother-in-laws. And no, it's not the same old she's entitled to her son. She literally hates Billy. My mother-in-law loves her older son and prefers him over Billy just because he's a trophy model child. She also prefers his wife over me, and she would constantly complain about us to others, and on our faces it really felt bad. She's toxic. She's complaining about how underwhelming our wedding was on the day of our wedding. It was humiliating, and I hate her for the drama she did at our wedding. I thought we would not have to hear from her after the wedding since we were moving on to live our own lives, but no. She would constantly call Billy just to do chores and run small errands, which literally anybody could do. Despite Billy running to her every time she called, she still insulted him and called him useless. I fought with Billy because I hated the damage it was doing to his self-respect. The fight created misunderstandings between us, and we would often fight over the same thing. At a dinner, the whole family, my mother-in-law criticized me and my husband stood up for me. She proceeded to insult my husband, and I stood up for him too. We cut ties with them, but then my father-in-law passed away, and my mother-in-law excluded us from the funeral by lying to us. All this had very bad effect on my husband's mental health. We found out that we had inherited 99% of his wealth. Well, my mother-in-law blew up our phones when she realized this, begging us to let her stay at the house. We kicked her out, and she went to her beloved son and daughter-in-law's house, who did not even want her there. So, I'll tell you everything from the start to finish. Billy and I met when we were shopping for Christmas stuff, and we liked the same gift of our Secret Santa. And there was only one left, and he gave up the gift, and I thought it was really sweet of him. He asked for my number, and then after 2 years of driving each other crazy, we decided to tie the knot. I had met his family before getting engaged a couple times, but I got to know the real issues and their family after he popped the question. He would not really take me home much when we were dating, and I avoided it. His family seemed pretty normal at first: Dad, Joseph, Mom, Elaine, his brother, Neil, and their cat, Boba. Neil does research at an esteemed business school about the economy and has many papers published. He also works for a gigantic bank. Obviously, any parent would be proud of a child like Neil. Billy's parents were proud too, though, except Elaine favored Neil over Billy for being the more successful child. Billy worked as our sous chef at a really good but humble Italian restaurant. No matter what Billy did, though, his efforts were never enough for Elaine. Billy revealed his equation with Elaine back when we were in the middle of wedding preparations. I thought it was an issue, and I confronted him about Elaine's weird behavior with Billy. She would constantly refer to Neil as the apple of her eye and tell anecdotes about him all the time. All his achievements were decorated in the drawing room, whereas Billy's were kept in a small corner of his own bedroom. He got extremely emotional, and I could almost see tears in his eyes. It's been this way ever since he was a child. Neil has always been the model child, but Billy always struggled at school. Instead of giving him the attention he needed, Elaine rendered him useless and put her entire focus into raising Neil. Billy was secondary to her, and Elaine and Joseph have always had marital issues, and their relationship was strained. Neil went off to university, and the couple's marital issues grew, causing fights between them that mentally affected Billy. Billy finished high school but decided he would not go on to pursue further education. Elaine had forced Joseph to sponsor Neil's education, which caused financial strain on the family. Billy was encouraged by Elaine to work, just to ease the financial burden, instead of pursuing a higher education. She called him dumb at the time and said he did not deserve more education anyways. In a fight between his parents, he overheard that she never wanted to give birth to Billy in the first place, and he was just a burden. Billy has always tried to please her for validation, but he's never received it. Billy said that he could have been in a better position, but Elaine tried to cut his wings off as much as she could, but wanted to call him useless too. He had never opened up about his family before, and I was glad I could understand him better. Until our wedding, Billy lived with his parents, and of course Elaine gave him a piece of her mind every day for still living in his parents' house. The reason Billy lived with his parents was because he did not want Joseph to feel lonely. He knew that the constant fighting would drive him insane, and I asked Joseph why he would not divorce Elaine. He said he loved his wife and kids too much to care about his own peace. Elaine's ranting made me so mad all the time, but I did not want to argue with her. Before our wedding, our families had dinner together, and it seemed like she was judging our family for not having much financial strength. She taunted Billy for not marrying a rich woman, just like Neil did. I kept telling myself that we would not have to deal with Elaine because we would have our own apartment after the wedding. Little did I know I was wrong. My tiff with Elaine got worse on the happiest days of our lives. Billy and I decided we would not spend much on the wedding because we spent our entire savings on the down payment for our house, because we did not want to be burdened with the loan. We wanted to have a little magical wedding. The guest list was not that long and it was a beautiful garden. Elaine complained to all the guests and laughed about how underwhelming the wedding was. That's something that the groom's mom is definitely not supposed to do. She starts comparing our wedding to Neil's and kept on talking about how extravagant his wedding was. My mom complimented how hard we worked to buy our own house. She said that a wedding is a holy union and it's not a time to show off but to be happy. All the guests agreed and loved my mom's enthusiasm about the wedding. She made the day a lot better. The fact that somebody criticized my wedding and it was none other than my mother-in-law really hurt me. I stopped respecting her that day and I started hating that woman. We went on the road trip for our honeymoon, and once we returned, Elaine started calling Billy for every little thing. If she needed to go to the bank, she needed Billy. She called him to bring his stuff from the shop and to pick up her bags, and when she went grocery shopping, she even called him in the middle of the night to change a bulb when Joseph had gone out with his buddies. He even left everything and went running at her beck and call, and even if he was at work. Despite Billy doing all of this for her, she'd still demean him all the time, calling him useless. The disturbance in our lives really made me mad. Well, what makes me mad even more was that I feel my husband had zero self-respect. She's not only insulting my husband all the time, but she's also just feeling entitled to his time despite calling him so useless. I could not take it anymore, and eventually I lashed out at Billy and told him not to go to the next time his mother called. I told him he needed to prioritize his work, himself, and me over his mother, who does not have even an ounce of respect or appreciation for him. I thought Billy would agree, but instead, he accused me of trying to separate him from his mommy. He told me that I should understand her and that she always has been used to having him around. He also defended her by saying that his parents are old and will require support. He said that maybe I should visit and help my parents out too, and I was offended because I knew I was doing as much as I could for my parents, but they did not really require any help or need for small chores. The fights kept getting repetitive, and we fought over the same thing. Billy misunderstood me and thought that I was asking him to cut ties, whereas I was just trying to tell him to draw some boundaries. Well, our relationship was going through a really rough patch. Elaine called Neil and his wife Clarissa during the holidays and invited me and Billy too for a family dinner. I thought it would be a good time to get to know my brother-in-law and his wife. We did not speak much during the wedding, and he never really visited. Elaine's food was nothing compared to my mom's, but she insisted on picking faults in my cooking, based on the one time she showed up unexpectedly and had to whip up a quick meal. She praised Clarissa and left no opportunity to show me in a bad light. She almost portrayed me as an evil jerk and Clarissa as an angel. I didn't really know Clarissa, but the 2 times I've met her, she came off as an entitled, self-obsessed idiot. Clarissa thought that she was the center of the world and would constantly complain if something was not the way she wanted. She asked me to change my dress in evening because she hated the gray. I told her I would not go home for another dress, so she asked me to buy one at the store nearby. Clarissa is an interior designer and she's blessed with generational wealth. Elaine would lick her feet if Clarissa asked her to. She defended her bossy and entitled behavior and called it the need for perfection. She kept on insulting me and I kept on listening to her. I didn't want to talk back and have my husband misunderstand me. Billy eventually came to my rescue and asked Elaine not to criticize me. He called me the most perfect woman ever. Billy stood up for me and the conversation turned into an argument. She starts to criticize Billy and said that he had not achieved anything in his life, and he simply never will. I stood up for my husband. I said that if she thinks her son is a failure, she's the one to blame. I called her the worst mother in the world. Elaine was outraged and she asked us to leave. Billy said that we will leave and we will never come back ever again. Billy completely cut ties that day. Billy looked at Joseph and asked him whether he was going to say anything against his wife, and Joseph stayed silent. Billy and I left. Well, Billy stuck true to his word, and for the next few weeks we did not speak to the family at all. Elaine did call him a couple times, but Billy did not respond, and she eventually sent a voicemail, calling Billy the most irresponsible person ever and saying that she did not need him anymore. I laughed in my head. How entitled she felt. Her other son, whom she praises, does not even visit her. The fights between us ended and we grew closer to each other. I was relieved, and I prayed that he would never talk to his mother again. A few days later, though, Billy's aunt, called Billy up and told him his father had passed away because of a stroke. Billy was not informed by Elaine that he was in the hospital, and Billy could not even be with him in his last moments. We were invited to a funeral service for Joseph by Elaine. It turns out that the funeral has already taken place. Elaine had lied to us to exclude us specifically from the funeral, and we went to Joseph's grave and paid our respects. Billy was in an immense grief. He deeply regretted missing his final moments and even his funeral. We called Elaine over and over again, but she did not pick up. We went to the house, but she told us to leave and never show our faces again. Billy regretted that he did not speak to his father for weeks before he died. They were very, very close, and they had gone for so long without speaking. He was engulfed by sadness, grief, and regret. He could not come to terms with the fact that his father had passed away. He suddenly grew silent. He blamed himself for being a bad son and not being there for his final moments. About 2 weeks later, a lawyer paid a visit with a letter. It was from Joseph to Billy, and Joseph wrote that he never had the courage to tell Billy all this while he was still alive. But he needed to know. He wrote a heartfelt message to Billy, telling him how much he loved him, and he also apologized for spending Neil's education at the expense of him and for his mother's behavior. As compensation, he gave Billy 99% of his wealth and 1% to charity. We got to keep the house, too. Elaine was extremely furious because she was supposed to inherit everything since she was his wife. We allowed her to live in the home, though, but she wanted to keep some of his wealth and the house. We would not give her the house, so she called the police on us and told them that we were illegally taking her house from her. We had all the proof against her stupid allegation. We decided to teach her a lesson, and we kicked her out of the house for all the pain that she caused me and Billy. We gave her 3 days to vacate the house and take all the stuff that she needed. She blew up our phones and begged us not to kick her out, but Billy told her it's too late. He kept asking me whether he was in the wrong for doing this or not, but I just assured him he was not in the wrong. Billy warned her that if she did not vacate on time, he would call the police and have her removed from the property. Elaine cursed over the voicemail again and left with her cat to go and stay at her son's house. I have reliable sources that tell me that she was definitely not welcomed at their home. Neil was reluctant to take her in, and Clarissa did not want her in the house at all. Elaine had to beg them to let her in. Neil agreed, but Clarissa kept the condition that she could not keep the cat. Billy had to drive all the way to pick up the cat. When Billy arrived at Neil's house, Neil called Billy selfish for kicking out his mom and guilt-tripped him. Billy just said that if he cares so much, he should keep his mother at his house, and if he can't, he should not expect that from him. He took the cat and left. Even after she went to Neil's house, she kept calling us to give her back the house, or at least let her stay. We did not budge and decided to block her on our phones, and we even discontinued our landline services and decided to live our lives happily and not give in to Elaine's demands. I get that what we did wasn't really right. I mean, after all, she is his mother. But she's always preferred her older son over him, and now she needs to see the reality. I hope she learns her lesson, sees that Billy is not useless, and starts valuing all that he's done and sacrificed for the family. I feel that it was wrong of her to dwell on the personal fights and exclude us from the funeral. It caused my husband a lifetime of pain and regret, and my husband would not let go of it. But he doesn't want to talk to anyone about it either. It's really affected him and continues to affect him, and I hope it does not haunt him for life and he eventually just lets it go. I can't convince him to go see somebody, but any suggestions about this would be so appreciated. Update number 1. Hello, I'm here with an update about Elaine. We never wanted anything bad for them, especially for Neil, but fate had other ideas. Clarissa hated Elaine being at her house, and she would literally treat her like a slave. Elaine was not allowed to touch anything at her house and was confined to her room. She was not allowed to show her face to Clarissa's friends, so no one knew that her mother-in-law was living at her house. She made Elaine's life a living hell, and Elaine still tried to call, begging us to let her stay at Billy's family house. Neil was not doing very well either. He made a bad investment for a really important client, and he was fired from his job. The loss the client faced was huge, and his reputation dropped. Apparently, the company he worked for asked for compensation for the defamation, or else they'd go legal. Neil had to pay to save himself from legal trouble. Of course, the bad reputation made it impossible to get a position of the same caliber. He had no credibility anymore. However, he did manage to find some work for himself, but it was not the same. The whole thing caused a strain in Clarissa and Neil's marriage. Clarissa was already unhappy about Elaine moving into their house. Clarissa is a socialite and likes to go to parties. She did not like the fact that she was humiliated and made fun of because of her husband's mistakes. Clarissa did not want to deal with it anymore, so she decided to divorce Neil, and Neil did not really want to lose his wife, so he begged her not to divorce him. Clarissa blamed the whole divorce on his mom and said that she could not live with her. Neil said that he would, kick his mom out to save their marriage, and this deeply hurt Elaine. Clarissa divorced him anyways, and she claimed a settlement of half of his wealth, including his house. Neil and his mom had to move out of the house and find another apartment for themselves. Neil blamed the whole divorce on Elaine and despised her for the whole thing that went down. We feel bad for how luck turned around for these two and Neil, but having a supportive partner is very important. Clarissa was selfish and valued her image and money over her husband, and I'm glad my husband's supportive and values me. Billy keeps telling me that he's always been taken for granted and that I'm the first person who's actually valued him. I'm glad he feels loved around me. I really want to give you an important message that I've learned through this. Value the people who do things for you. Don't take them for granted, and don't stay where you aren't respected. Billy learned his lesson, and now we're really happy with our lives. Huge gratitude to everybody who's reading and listening to me. I appreciate the comments as well. Update number 2. Final update of the story. Hey guys, here's another one about my husband's mother. Remember when I said that she was a bad mother to Billy? Well, it turns out that she was a bad mother to Neil too. It just wasn't really obvious yet. Neil was upset over the whole divorce and it was taking a toll on his life. He wasn't very happy at work either, and Elaine, well, she started to get sick over time and could not cook or do housework. She needed medical attention as she developed arthritis, and Neil called her useless and a good-for-nothing person. He kept reminding her that she was a burden to him. He taunted her for being at the mercy of her son, and I guess it sounds familiar, right? She almost treated Billy the same way. Now she's getting payback. Karma really hits. Neil was extremely frustrated because he was not getting what he wanted in life. You see, Neil has a really bad social life too. The only friends he had were Clarissa's, and he wanted to talk to somebody, so he turned to Billy and he cried and got drunk. He shouted at his mother for being hard on him and always expecting too much. He said he could not deal with the pressure of being perfect all the time. He said he wanted to hurt himself so many times throughout college because there was so much expected of him. He also could not marry his girlfriend because she wasn't rich enough for his mother and had to marry Clarissa instead. Clarissa left him too, and he thought his mom was the reason. Neil said that he constantly wanted to run away from his mom, and now she's living at his house. Billy took pity on them and brought his mom back to his family's house. Neil paid for her medical expenses, and we contributed too. It was all okay at first, but then Elaine went back to her old ways of being a jerk again. She kept calling Billy for the smallest of things, and he started being dramatic, and kept us trying to gain his sympathy by calling herself lonely. But the catch is, she still kept calling him useless, and kept praising her older son despite him kicking her out. The audacity! We could not deal with her any longer, so we decided it's best for us to drop her off in an old age home. She clearly did not deserve to be with her family after being such a pain in our butts and not realizing the value of her son. She kept calling us to ask us to pick us up again, and she told us that she did not want to stay in an old age home, but we told her it's her fault she's lonely. Neil did not intervene because he didn't want her either. He also went back to Clarissa, begging her to take him back, but she just wouldn't budge. He tried to reach out to us, but I just saw him as a spoiled brat who wanted everything his way. I told Billy to stay away from him and decided we should move forward with our lives for good. Neil needed to face failure too and realize life can't be the way he wanted all the time. Billy used the money his dad left him to open up a restaurant, and we prayed that it would be a successful one because it was Joseph's hard-earned money. We named it after Joseph and called it Joe's. It was an Italian restaurant and the first of its kind in our little town. We kept it a little posh and pricey. Even though it was heavy on the investments, it was an instant hit. And so far, so good. We're really happy with our lives, and we put up Joseph's house on the rent, and now we receive rental income as well. It's just going so well for us. I'm pretty sure Elaine would have heard about Billy's success by now. He instantly turned his life around with the right investment, and well, I should not really be saying this, but Billy is the better son too for giving his mom a second chance, but she's ruined it. Now she's alone forever and none of her sons respect her. Good for her, right? At least she has a roof over her head and has a few years left to realize how wrong she was. So, the mother-in-law of the story decides to slip back into her old ways and starts being a massive issue again. Well, guys, I guess she's going to the old age home. Let me know your thoughts about this. Some of the comments in the original post in the updates were saying how they did not agree with how OP and them went ahead and put her in an old person's home, but a lot of other commenters were saying, are you guys insane? The mother-in-law of the story was so ridiculous, I can't believe that she was given so many chances to begin with. First of all, I would like to hear your thoughts about those perspectives, so drop it downstairs in our comment section. If you guys want daily videos, there's 3 ways to support the channel, and it's super easy. Smash the like button if you enjoyed it, of course. Drop a comment down below with an experience that you've had that's similar to the story or related to it. And the third and the best way is so simple, hit that subscribe button, guys. I'll see you tomorrow, and just remember, it's cool to be kind. Peace.